This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
And just like that, we go from optimism to skepticism. We'll discuss next year on this week's episode of Michigan Podcast.
But there's going to be one team that's going to play solely as a team. No man is more important than the team. No coach is more important than the team. The team, the team, the team.
Looks deep for Anthony Carter. Waits for it. Yes, caught.
This is no time for that. In the pocket and a sack. Tim Jamison. Brady gets terrific. Throws it, get it, touchdown, Knight again. Schultz just before Brazil got him. And a leaping interception by Woodson.
Harbaugh back to throw over the middle. Caught by Collier at the 5 on his feet. Touchdown, Michigan. On its way. It's good.
He's 5'7", 179 pounds, a junior at Michigan. But Jamie Morris packs a wallop, and he delivers for Bo Schembechler.
And here's your first play. Pressure coming. Sack. It is Glenn Steele, number 81, who fought his way through the traffic.
Option. And Robinson calls his own number, and he's going to score. Oh, an easy touchdown for Robinson and Michigan.
We're going to win the championship again because we're going to play as a team. And when we play as a team and the old season is over, you and I know it's going to be Michigan again. Michigan.
Go Blue, I'm Steve Deace. Welcome to this week's episode of Michigan Podcast, which will have a slightly darker tone than last week's episode. That's why I decided to wear some white with the 2012 Sugar Bowl champion throwback commemorative uniform, because I know for some of you, particularly the younger variety, you don't recall, but there were days, folks, that Michigan won major bowl games. Michigan competed for championships. That used to happen, in fact, with regularity around here. We had hoped after the first 4 weeks of putting up some impressive analytics to the point that ESPN's FPI predictive model had Michigan favored in every game but one the rest of the way, that maybe this might be a surprise team. It still might be. But after that second half against Rutgers, folks, there's clearly some work to do. So let's break it down for you. In fact, let us begin with that second half against Rutgers, because that could very well be one of the worst halves of football that Michigan has ever, like in the history of the program, going back to 1879, has ever played. 42 yards of offense and 2 first downs. 42 yards and 2 first downs. Nick Sheridan called and said, what? In fact, we'll be talking about Nick Sheridan here again in just a second, because that brings us to our second point. This is the second time now that we've essentially seen Cade McNamara shut down in game. And folks, we haven't even played on the road yet. That's not a good sign. In fact, let's delve a little bit deeper into Cade McNamara, shall we? There was another outstanding Monday morning quarterback breakdown by former Michigan quarterback Devin Gardner on WTKA Ann Arbor on Monday. And he pointed out again, like with Washington, that our coaches justifiably lost in-game confidence with Cade McNamara, which forced us into an offensive shell. So that kind of prompted me to look at how Cade has performed against Power 5 opponents so far. When you look at these numbers, McNamara has so far started 3 games against Power 5 opponents. These are the games that really matter, the games that really test you, not the MAC, not Northern Illinois. All 3 of these were at home. They were also against teams who were just a combined 3-6 at the time, with all 3 of those wins by Rutgers. So, I mean, this would seem to be a pretty favorable situational sample to look at. Except, here's the numbers. In those games, McNamara completed just 50% of his passes, compared to 61% against non-Power 5 opponents. That 61's actually not good enough in today's college football, let alone 50%. And get this, he has yet to throw a single touchdown pass, and he has averaged just 99 yards passing per game. Those numbers are, I mean, I don't even know what to say to that. And yes, I know that he left last year's Penn State game early with an injury, but he still attempted 25 passes beforehand, and that is easily his most passes attempted in any of his career starts. So I think that's definitely a sample or worthy of including in this sample. McNamara's average QBR against Power 5 opponents is a paltry 37.9. That is almost impossible to accept. To put it in some form of context for you, by comparison, Nick Sheridan is considered the worst starting quarterback in modern Michigan football history, and he had a QBR of 49.2 in his first 3 starts against Power 5 teams. To put it in further perspective, Nick Sheridan was demonstrably better in his first few starts against major conference opposition than Cade McNamara has been. And Sheridan, by the way, obviously played on perhaps the worst Michigan team in school history, and yet he still statistically outperformed McNamara from the outset, which is why I think McNamara has these 2 road games coming up against Wisconsin and Nebraska to really show something, or I think we're going to see J.J. McCarthy start against Northwestern after the bye. Third, I mean, where was the imagination on offense in the second half? I understand you've shut it down with the quarterback, but I mean, you don't trust him to just throw a bubble screen outside with with Rutgers putting 8-9 guys in the box, and so your outside receivers are both lined up 1-on-1 out there. You don't trust him to just throw a bubble screen out there? You don't trust that? I mean, what is this, junior high football? This is the friggin' big house, man. You can't throw that. Where were the jet sweeps reverses we've seen work so well the first few weeks of the season to attack in overcompensating defense with some misdirection? We didn't see any of that in the second half at all. To me, McNamara is a bigger issue, a far bigger issue, actually. I don't think it's even close, than the lack of imagination on offense, but I don't think the coaches necessarily helped him all that much either. Fourth, for all of the offseason changes, forgive me, but this is starting to look like a typical Harbaugh team. Dominate scrubs, no real playmaker at quarterback, and then you don't respond when you're punched in the mouth. I mean, Rutgers came out defensively, punched Michigan right in the mouth, and Michigan responded with 2 first downs and 42 yards. So there you go. And then finally, man, this looked eerily similar to the Army game in 2019. Remember, Michigan also, something was going on with Shea Patterson. They shut it down with him on him too, ran Zach Charbonnet into the line 30 times. He never recovered his entire rest of his freshman year. And a win was a win. And then the defense steps up and makes the stop, and then they celebrated in the stands like they just won the Big Ten. Well, they did that again against Rutgers, probably the worst team remaining on our schedule, or at least the second worst. Even if they are improved, they're not better than Indiana. They're not better than Michigan State. They're not better than Ohio State. Thankfully, we don't play them. So, I mean, this looked a lot like that. Just shut down the entire offense, go into a shell in the second half, hold on for dear life at the end, then celebrate like you just won a Big Ten championship. And then remember who Michigan played the next game after Army in 2019? Yep. Same team they play after Rutgers 2021 at Wisconsin. And if you've looked, by the way, Wisconsin is a 1-point favorite right now over the Wolverines, even though Michigan's ranked and Wisconsin's not. If you want to get in on that action or any other action this weekend, get the advantage over your sportsbook with BetQL. Download it today. It's the only app you're going to need to make smart bets, their best bets computer model. It scans over 350,000 unique bets per year to give you a best bet recommendation for every game across all major sports, and they cover everything from the spreads to over-unders, even player props. You get the sharp data to find out what the pros are doing, the people who do this for a living, all the latest line movements, injury news, team updates, and more. So head to the App Store or the Google Play Store now to download BetQL. Again, go to the App Store or Google Play Store now to download BetQL. And then while you're there, enter the discount code MP for Michigan Podcast, MP at payment checkout, and you're going to get 25% off any of their subscription offerings. Remember, you can find all this information in the description of this video, and also check out their sportsbook offers like BetMGM and other places, no matter where you live. If you're in one of these eligible states, to claim free offers upon signing up at one of the many sportsbooks listed. Again, get the BetQL app in your App Store or Google Play Store. Enter the discount code MP at payment checkout for 25% off. Well, let's get the view from the other side of the scarlet and gray septic tank with maybe the one and only reasonable Ohio State bucknut, our good friend Mark Rogers, who himself has a fantastic college football channel here on YouTube, the voice of college football. Good to see you again, brother. How are you?
Great to see you, Steve. This football season, it's an intriguing one, especially in the Big Ten East.
Mark, I don't know if you saw this stat. I tweeted it out yesterday, but there have already been more ranked teams that have lost in the first 4 weeks of the AP poll than in the history of the AP poll. And it goes back to 1936. So this is the most ranked teams we've ever seen lose in the first 4 weeks of the season. Your thoughts on that?
I think it has to do with the experience of these mid-level teams with all the super seniors coming back. I think that has a lot to do with it. We talked about defensive football being more in vogue with a full year of spring practice, summer camp, individual workouts throughout the year that we did not have in 2020. And this has been the result. And with all those upsets, we are razor close to having another handful or so of favorites who survived.
You've got the transfer portal as well, so you have a program like a Clemson. They literally don't have another quarterback to go to if they wanted to. They literally don't, and we're going to see more and more of this, Mark. You're just, particularly in this NIL era where Graham Mertz makes money. I mean, he's terrible. He makes money on T-shirts. Spencer Rattler's got national deals, and his fan base on primetime TV is cheering for his backup. Guys just are not going to sit there and wait 2 or 3 years for their turn anymore. We're going to see a lot more of this. I think that's one of the reasons why there's such a quick hook with the shoulder injury for CJ Stroud in Columbus, because if you're Ryan Day and you start struggling, those other guys behind him are like, dude, if I'm not going to play here, I'm out of here. I'm Kyle McCord. I'm not waiting a year. I'm gone. And so I think we're going to see actually a lot more of this going forward. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't think there's any question about it. I thought that we carried on that conversation a number of times, and it was speculation at the time, but it was reasonable thinking that how is this NIL situation going to affect college football teams? Well, it's going to take that guy that was willing to stick out a situation at an Ohio State, for example, and obviously now looking at the opportunity elsewhere at a mid-level school in another conference or the same conference and see that opportunity to play, because you don't make money if you don't play. So the NIL opportunities are going to players that actually start and play. Therefore, why sit, go somewhere else and play, make money? Let's talk about Michigan.
So first and foremost, are you in the camp that says, hey, they've played one bad half after 14 consecutive good ones? Don't overthink it. Probably was a letdown with Wisconsin on deck, and just couldn't, after they kind of let down, it happens. Or are you of the mind that says what happened here is Rutgers finally figured out, why don't we put 75 guys in the box? And it doesn't matter how many pros Michigan has on their offensive line. 5 guys can't block 11. Okay, so, and we're just going to dare Michigan to throw in to beat us, and it turns out that when a team does that, particularly one with a pulse, albeit it's still Rutgers, they can't. So which of those two camps are you in after that game against the Scarlet Knights?
So
or that half against them, I should say.
Yeah, well, I tend to be in neither extreme camp of, okay, sound the alarms, Michigan's awful, they'll never be able to run the ball against anyone ever again. And then on the other end of the spectrum, they'll be fine. They figure it out. They just do whatever they need to do on that particular week. There are real issues with Michigan football, and I think it comes with we saw two halves of football that were basically they could have switched uniforms, and we would have thought it was the same game from half to half. Michigan dominated but was unable to pull away completely in the first half. Rutgers dominated the second half, but Michigan's fortunate that Rutgers does not have an explosive offense. That's what it comes down to, because if they had any playmakers and the quarterback to be able to create explosive plays, Michigan would have lost that game. What I see there is that basically, Cade McNamara made a comment after the game that I thought was completely ridiculous. I don't know. He was basically trying to answer why the offense was stagnant in the second half. And he said, quote, "We were lacking momentum." Then he jumbled around with a few other things. Then he basically said it was a lack of momentum. I don't even know what that means. We were lacking momentum on offense. Basically, the reason you don't move the ball on offense is either you don't have enough talent, you're not executing, or the play calling's bad. What I think happened to Michigan is basically they ran the same running play over and over and over and over in the middle and to the left side. They loved the left side in the first half with different window dressing and backs in different spots and different motion, but the same blocking scheme and same play in the first half. So Rutgers adjusted at halftime. Greg Schiano does what a good coach does, and he adjusted to that. They also hit for a lot of big pass plays in the first half, running basically the same route. Those crossing routes were tearing up Rutgers. And the one time the tight end, who should probably be used more, Eric All, he's kind of sat down in the zone, caught like a 25-yard play. Well, they took that away in the second half, and Cade McNamara had to throw to the sidelines, and he was unable to do that. So Rutgers adjusted at halftime. Michigan failed to do so, but they were good enough defensively to survive.
To me, I think the issue is the quarterback. I think he started 3 games against Power 5 opponents. Doesn't really matter what numbers you put up against Northern Illinois, okay? He has started 3 games against Power 5 opponents, Mark. And those 3 opponents had a combined 3-6 record at the time. And all 3 wins were the wins that Rutgers came into last Saturday's game with. And they were all at home. I mean, you can't ask for a more favorable situational sample size, right? All at home against teams that came in unranked and unimpressive, okay? In those 3 games, he has completed 50% of his passes. Now, his overall number this season is 61. That's actually not very good in today's college football, let alone 50. He has no touchdown passes, Mark, and he's averaged 99 yards passing per game. Those are his numbers in 3 games against Power 5 opponents, all at home. His QBR in those games is 37.9. To put that in perspective, I went back and looked at Nick Sheridan, who is considered the worst quarterback in modern Michigan football history, the walk-on who got essentially buffaloed. He's now the OC at Indiana. He's probably going to be a head coach someday, but he's the walk-on that got buffaloed into being Rich Rod's first sacrificial lamb his first year, okay? His first 3 games against Power 5 opponents, and I'm counting the opener against Utah, even though they weren't a Power 5 team at the time. His first 3 games against Power 5 opponents, his QBR was 10 points higher, was 47.9. All right? Yeah, I saw you blink. Yeah, those numbers are something, okay? And to me, I think what's happened here, this is the same game that we played against Washington. We just ran, it's just Washington, for whatever reason, didn't put 14 guys at the line of scrimmage. They stayed in their traditional defense. They didn't make those adjustments, so we could keep running it. What happened here is that they don't trust their quarterback. And they tried to even put it in his hands in that second half after Rutgers scored their touchdown, and they passed 3 times in a row in the next possession, and all 3 passes were off. They were all bad. And they just don't trust him. And so the offense goes into a shell. What I think is going to happen here is he's got these 2 road games against Wisconsin and Nebraska. If they don't win them both, because he just managed the game and didn't turn it over, or he doesn't show something, I think during the bye they will make the switch to J.J. McCarthy with 2 full weeks to prepare and Northwestern on deck. Because here's what this season is about. Harbaugh is very calculating. This is about saving his ass, okay, and saving his job. That's why you've seen them go back to a lot of his offense that he knows. That's what a lot of coaches do. I mean, your job gets threatened. If I go down, I'm going down with what I know best, right? Okay? So this is about winning as many games as they can, because this is also a really young team. Win as many games as you can and save Harbaugh's job. They're trying to bide their time with McCarthy. They didn't want to throw him out there against Washington's defense with, basically that entire secondary is going to the NFL. They didn't want to do that. You obviously don't want him starting on the road at Madison for his first career start, maybe the toughest place in our league to play. You don't want that. So this was about seeing what they could get out of Cade McNamara just to keep things on the down low, win as many games as they can, and then you sort of restart the clock when you put JJ in, because if you're going to go 8-4, but you did it with J.J. McCarthy giving people some hope for the potential in the future of the second half of the season, that looks a lot different than if you're 8-4 and J.J. McCarthy last played against Northern Illinois. You know what I'm saying? So I think this is all very calculated. That's what I think is going on. And so McNamara's got 2 weeks to show he can play, and if he can't, they'll kick him to the curb. Well,
to defend Cade McNamara to a certain extent, when he has the statistics after 3 games, meaning the pass attempts, not just the qualitative statistics of the QBR that's as low as you just pointed out, but he's not getting the reps to improve that he needs. Mm-hmm. They have wasted the opportunity with big leads against inferior opponents to work on the passing game. You can only get so many reps in practice, and again, he's facing a defense in practice that's better than the defense that he's going to face on Saturday. Yes, I get that, but aside from that, they're not live bullets. He's not getting hit. They had opportunities in the fourth quarter of those games to work on the passing game, and he was still getting 9 and 10 and 11 pass attempts. Now, to your point, certainly our indication of J.J. McCarthy being set up as the starter has been he's almost received as many pass attempts in the limited time that he's played in the first 3 games of the season, at least, as Cade McNamara, with getting 6 and 8 and 10 pass attempts in those games. So it certainly looks as though they had a plan, or Jim Harbaugh had a plan.
What do you expect to see here this Saturday against Wisconsin? Michigan has not won there since 2001. These are 2 teams that absolutely do not trust their quarterbacks. Graham Mertz threw Wisconsin out of that game against Notre Dame. They were ahead in that game and going early in the fourth quarter. Of course, the Irish had that kickoff return, and then Graham Mertz just does what he basically has done against every opponent other than Illinois in the opener last year. And what I think both coaches are going to do here, I think Michigan's already shown you this is what they're going to do. And I think Paul Chryst right now is sitting there thinking, you know what, man, I don't care what I promised this kid and recruit or nothing else. I'm running that Malusi kid and Jalen Berger into the effing ground on Saturday. Okay. We're going to see Jim Harbaugh and I are going to play who's more stubborn. All right, because who's the first person that forces their quarterback to make the stupid mistake that ends up losing him the game? Punts on third down. This is going to be a game that makes David Shaw aroused. That's what I think we're going to see on Saturday. You?
Well, I will say, Steve, that I'm surprised that I'm making this comment, but I'm more certain about Michigan football and what they're going to give me on Saturday in regards to their identity, their game plan, their approach, and the level of play. I think this is a good football team. I think it's one of the 15 best teams in America, but no more than that. Wisconsin, though, you've brought up his name more than any other name other than Cade McNamara during this segment, and that's Graham Mertz. And I was going to say right out of the gate, he's the most important player in this game, because if Graham Mertz can just turn in a 12 or 18 day and not turn the ball over, just not turn the ball over, then I trust that the Wisconsin defense. Who has ever seen a team that's given up 41 points as they did to Notre Dame on Saturday, that had 6 sacks, 12 tackles for loss, held their opponent to under 300 yards total offense? They're still a great defense.
Yes, they are
a great defense.
Yeah. That's an amazing stat line that you just laid out there. I think Wisconsin's going to win by double digits. I don't think Michigan will score an offensive touchdown.
If they can get Graham Mertz just to take care of the football. He did the same thing against Penn State. He couldn't catch a snap inside the red zone. He messed up the game. He messed up the game against Notre Dame. That's all there is to it, man. Yeah. Kyron Williams, one of the best running backs in college football. Steve, Kyron Williams gained 33 yards on 18 carries against that Notre Dame
this Notre Dame
defense.
Offensive line is not that good. I mean, last 2 weeks ago against Purdue, Kyron had like a 60-yard run in the fourth quarter, and he had like 90 yards on his previous 23 carries or something. So this offensive line's not that great, but I get your point. This Wisconsin D is phenomenal, no doubt about it. It's the best unit on the field, I think. They're at home. Michigan just doesn't win games against sentient beings wearing white jerseys. When they're the ones wearing white jerseys, they don't win in that stadium. You're not going
with some red mixed in.
Yeah, and you don't trust it. I meant when Michigan's wearing the white jerseys.
Oh, okay.
But they don't trust your quarterback. If neither team does, give me the team who's at home. They're more likely to get away with not trusting their quarterback. And then I think next week you and I will be talking about two people playing for their jobs: Scott Frost and Cade McNamara. All right. And, Frost can finally either get a signature win or Cade McNamara saves his job. That's what I think you and I will be talking about this time next week. I'll give you the last word.
Well, think about how fun this is, Steve, that we just witnessed the worst team in the division, of the Big Ten Eastern Division, and they played within one score of Michigan. And I was looking at the drive chart and just rewatched the second half cut down version. And they had opportunity after opportunity. 10 minutes left in the game. They had first and goal to tie the game. If they are able to do that, we've got 7. I don't know what the probability or the math number is on the number of games that are going to be played within this division. But if Ohio State doesn't kick up its game, Penn State's probably the best team in the division in regards to at least. They're the most certain team I know that's a quality team week to week.
We'll see. They can't run the ball. Almost all their offensive stats are against Ball State and Villanova. Okay, they can't run. They ran the ball for less than 100 yards against Auburn. Couldn't run the ball a lick against Wisconsin. We'll see. I don't know. I think this is why your guy is so. This is why your guy is so aggressive with McCord at quarterback, because I think he knows I've got a game or two in this conference to play with, and as long as I can be 7-2 and win the league, and as long as those 2 losses are not to Penn State and somebody else, I think that's why there was such a short leash for C.J. Stroud. On top of the other factors we've talked about, I think he knows he's got a little bit of margin to make things like defensive coordinator switches and stuff mid-season, because there's so much, shall we call it, parity in this league this year. I'll give you the last word.
Parity, exactly that. I can't think of a matchup in the Big Ten Eastern Division. I guess the one coming up this Saturday, Rutgers, Ohio State, would be the most certain win for one team over another. But we're going to constantly have games that are throw up your hands. Who's going to win this game? Unless Ohio State breaks away, unless maybe Penn State's that good, and maybe the chaos continues to another level starting this Friday in the Big Ten when Iowa goes to Maryland.
Interesting game. Team that's in the top 10 is barely a field goal favorite on the road against an unranked team. So there you go. Good to see you as always, Mark. Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Steve.
You bet. And folks, let me remind you that DraftKings Sportsbook is an official sports betting partner of the NFL, and it's got a Week 5 offer for every football fan to jump on. New customers can bet just $1 on any NFL game and win $100 in free bets if either team scores a point. Now, the last time we had a 0-0 tie in the NFL was in 1943, so I think this is pretty close to a no-brainer. All right. DraftKings customers can also get skin in the game with new same-game parlays, where you can combine multiple bets from the same game for a bigger payout. The more legs you add, the more money you can win. Remember, DraftKings, safe, secure, and reliable. And best of all, you can deposit and withdraw your cash whenever you want. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now using promo code MichiganPodcast and bet just $1 on any NFL game and win $100 in free bets if either team just scores a single point. Again, download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use the promo code MichiganPodcast to take advantage of that offer. And now, if you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services Gambling Disorder Helpline at 800-270-7117. 21 and older, Michigan only. Eligibility restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for full terms and conditions. This week's Twitter poll results, we asked you who wins next week. 52.6% of you said Michigan. 47.4% said Wisconsin. So it's a toss-up. Wisconsin's going to win, guys, unfortunately. That brings us to our feedback of the week. This is from Haas, who says, maybe it's not that everyone is bad, but that no one is really, really good this year in college football. And therefore, I kind of like our chances this year. Michigan's schedule finally lines up well for us, and we seem to have a relatively talented team. I don't really know who's good. I mean, Georgia playing that rock fight against Clemson week 1 doesn't look nearly as impressive now as it did at the time, right? They're putting up huge numbers, but they've been playing scrubs ever since. Alabama's played one team with full motor function, and they were a 2-point attempt away from overtime in that game. I already mentioned on the program we've had more losses amongst ranked teams in the AP poll in the first 4 weeks than we've ever had in the first 4 weeks of the AP poll, going back to 1936. So it could just be that this is going to be a crazy year. It could be. And if it is, then, it's something that Michigan take advantage of. But at some point, you have to have a quarterback that you can trust to make at least 2 or 3 throws for you. And right now, so far anyway, Michigan doesn't have that. Let's hope and pray that that changes come Saturday in Madison. All right, once more, thanks again to our sponsor, BetQL. It's the only app you're going to need to beat your sportsbook. Find their information along with a 25% off discount code in the description of this video, and also check out the special BetMGM offer in the description in order to receive $200 in free bets and other sportsbook sign-up offers and bonuses from BetQL. The #1 app to compare betting odds. It's a must-get if you want to beat your sportsbook this football season. Don't forget to like, rate, subscribe, 5-star review, share, follow, whatever the case may be on whichever platform it is that you access us through. Thank you very much. Please keep letting other Michigan fans just like you know about what we do here on Michigan Podcast so we can reach more and more of the maize and blue. You can also follow us on Twitter at Michigan Podcast. Keep up to date on what we think all things maize and blue in between episodes. Until the next time, I hope that we are talking about 5-0 next week right here on Michigan Podcast.